And good evening. Sorry for our late start this evening. This is the March 14th meeting of the Board of Selectmen. All select board members are indeed present this evening, and if you would all join me and stand, I will ask Mr. Somaglia to start us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all. As I mentioned, we were in executive session that ran a little bit behind schedule. It's 7:24 at the moment, and so we do have the transmitting of Treasury warrants 35, 35A, 36. Looks like 36, I think it's 36A, typo there, 37 and 37A. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. We have no minutes to approve. We've already had our picture taken. This is great. We're knocking things off here. Our 6:30 scheduled, I'm sorry, that was the executive session. So now we'll jump right to our 7 o'clock scheduled appointment with Robert G. Peterson, Esquire, on behalf of Michael Palmer and Amy Palmer. It's a public hearing for Wilmington's East Coast Diner Incorporated, doing business as East Coast Diner, to request and obtain an all-alcohol license for property located at 203 Lowell Street. Mr. Peterson.
Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, for the record, Attorney Robert G. Peterson, 314 Main Street, Wilmington, for the applicant, Wilmington's East Coast Diner, Inc. With me this evening is Mr. Michael Palmer. He'll be the proprietor of Wilmington's East Coast Diner. This matter, Mr. Chairman, this is one of two restaurants approved at the corner of Lowell Street and Woburn Street. It has been the matter of a relatively long site plan approval before the planning board. The site plan, that property has been approved. The hearings have been closed. It's been approved for two restaurants, both of which are being purchased by Mr. Palmer. This is the only one being permitted at this time, and the other lot on that site will be a pet care facility, and all three of those uses have been approved by the planning board. Mr. Palmer's application before the board this evening is for the rear of the two restaurants, which will be located at the rear of the parcel at the corner of Woburn and Lowell. If you're familiar with the area, it will be located approximately where the rear driveway is to Textron. So if you go to the Lowell Street and take a right, he'll be located right before you get to the rear Textron driveway, before the residential area of Woburn Street begins. Mr. Palmer's facility, as evidenced in the floor plan submitted to the board, will contain 156 inside seats and 5,538 gross square footage. It will be a diner in nature. This is not Mr. Palmer's first foray into the restaurant business. He owns Fusilli's in Stoneham. He owns Stearns and Hill in Melrose, and he's a former proprietor of the Tanner Tavern in Woburn. He's very anxious to get started with this facility. It was a relatively long time in the making, and as soon as this matter is concluded and the easements are drafted to the approval of the planning board and the engineering department, he will be ready to go. So, if anybody has any specific questions about the nature of the restaurant, I'm sure that Mr. Palmer would be more than happy to share his thoughts with the board.
Indeed. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. I'll tell you what, I have a few questions, but I'm going to defer first to my colleagues on the board. I guess, why don't I open up down to the left? Judy, if you want to start.
Well, thank you for the opening. The application itself looks in order, but I certainly would be interested in any sort of public summary or brief description of what is going to be going in there, just for the general public, to the extent that you could comment.
Mike? Sure. So my name is Michael Palmer. I live in Linfield. Grew up in Winchester, so I'm local to the area. I currently operate Stearns and Hills Bistro in Melrose. I've and I currently own Fusilli's. It's actually on the Stoneham Reading line, so it's a Reading property. It was formerly Sam's Bistro, but I rebranded it just recently. I've also operated 2 restaurants in Winchester on Swanton Street that I've sold, and as Attorney Peterson said, I created the Tanner Tavern in Woburn that I sold to my brother, who currently operates that. I have about 30 years of restaurant experience. I have a culinary degree from California Culinary Academy in San Francisco. I've operated several liquor licenses to date, like 3 or 4. I've never had an issue ever with the states or towns that I've been in. I've run a real clean record. And then specific to this property, I've always wanted to create a diner, old-fashioned, single-story, booths in the window, neon or LED, however that's going to lay out. Like I said, single-story. This is 150 seats, and if you look at the layout, it actually tries to bring some of the old diner elements into it. So there is a breakfast counter right off to the front of the building, a lot of booth seating. And also, we provide a full bar in the back of the property, so which allows us to, serve families kind of in the front and adults in the back. If we could separate them, just to provide a better environment. The menu will be traditional diner, so breakfast 7 days a week, lunch and dinner, full liquor based on the hours approved. Burgers, hot dogs, meatloaf, fried fish, real traditional East Coast diner style food.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just don't have any questions, but I need to make a couple of comments pertaining to the parcel in question. To be honest with you, I was very well involved in the early process of the zoning relative from it going from general industrial to general business, well before the town meeting and well before any planning board public hearing. Bob, if you can help me, the gentleman for Holland, he's a nice guy. His haircut comes to here. I don't know his name, but if you can just tell me his name, I can.
Bill Yetman.
All right, Bill, let me write that down. I forgot the gentleman's name. Now, I'm going to be honest with you. Bill Yetman came to see me prior to, even before going to town meeting, before planning board. He said, I'd like to sit down and talk to you. And for the record, I owned Michael's Place for 31 years. And as a member of the Board of Selectmen, I voted for everyone's common victual license, everyone's liquor license, every entertainment license. I never voted against a restaurant in those 31 years. So he sat down, he came in, he patronized, and I have to take a few minutes, Mr. Chairman, because I think a few things need to be said here. He came into my restaurant, bought some food, and he introduced himself. He came again a second time and said, bought some food, I'd like to introduce myself again. Do you think I could sit down and talk to you? Well, before any of this, sat down, talked to him. Doggy world. That was the theme of the town meeting. But prior to that, he goes, I want to show you a set of plans. This thing's unique. There's only a few in the nation. We're going to be proud to have it. And I looked him in his eyes, and I'm going to tell you right now, I said, is there anything else going on that parcel of property? No, just doggy world. Now, I got to say, and I understand, Bob, you did your job, and I might have an issue with Howland, and I'll talk about that. The whole theme of that town meeting was doggy world. That was it. People on the town meeting floor, local officials got up and said, I love it. I wish, as a human, I could get that Olympic-sized swimming pool. I wish I could take advantage of that. We all love our animals. I voted for that. Many of the people in this room sitting up here voted for that. And I got to tell you, I think some people might be hard-pressed to even say this, there was never talk about any restaurants or anything in that facility. Not at all. Go to the town meeting, everybody felt great, we voted for it. Doggy world. Well, you know something? For 31 years, I owned a restaurant. I would get up, drive down Treasury Hill Road, Andover Street, Woburn Street. I'd take that right onto Lowell Street. A few weeks later, after that zoning, big sign goes up, Holland Development, future site, retail stores, banks, restaurants. That was never said about putting restaurants or banks at that particular town meeting. About a month or so later, I'm in the town hall to take care of constituent business. I bump into Bill Yetman, and I see him. I says, hey, whatever happened? Doggy world. I says, you used me. Looked at me and walked away. It needs to be said. It needs to be said. That was, and I need to continue here, please, all right? I need to, and I know, and and I would hope to think, and I know, I don't blame you. I don't blame Bob. Bob got he presented at the town meeting, did his job. My issue was with Holland.
That's my issue, not with you, Bob, and not with you, sir. And I'm sure you have an outstanding resume, believe me. I wish I worked for you, I probably would have learned a lot more. But anyway, you know, so it needs to be said. And you know something, it's, and I gotta say, in 1982, 81, I went to town meeting to zone a piece of property, put a restaurant. Kept my word, put a restaurant. In the late 80s, and I have to say, Johnny Forrest went for some zoning. And what bothers me, when people tell you this and they do that, that bothers me. When you go to town meetings, very sacred, very sacred. You have to, when you tell people what you're looking for, you have to mean it. Now, Johnny Forrest, and I got up and supported Johnny Forrest, because the state was gonna put him out of business. Lo and behold, didn't happen, and he kept his gas station. And in the late 80s, I served on the Board of Selectmen since 87. That board found fit to go to town meeting. They were upset and try to rezone that property back, so that would prohibit Mr. Forrest to do what he wanted. Went to town meeting, the people at town meeting voted it down, allowed that zoning, and that was fine. You know, it had a great idea, and believe me, once again, I voted for every single restaurant in this community. Great track record. In the late 90s, I had this great idea. I owned another piece of property right next, it was the Pike House, and Bob's familiar with that, near the tennis courts, the Carboni House. I wanted to open up a second restaurant. So I decided to go to town meeting. I knew that was gonna be a tough sell. My wife's grandfather worked for, said to me, you know what would really go great there? A funeral home. He worked for Brown & Brown and all these agencies out there as a funeral director. And I says, it would go. And if I presented that to the town meeting, that would have fly. Because coming off I-93, Lowell Street, Old House, plenty of parking, that would have passed. But nope, I said, I want to put a restaurant. I can't do that. I went to the town meeting, I got shot down. People said, we didn't want to see another restaurant on Lowell Street. I could have been a scumbag and said, I want to put a funeral home, sat on it for 1 or 2 years, and then sneak my restaurant on. And it's not a shot at you, sir, and Bob, I love you, and I know we're friends. And I don't blame you at all. That was Doggy World. That was it. That never happened. Never happened. And I can go on and on and on. But you know something? You know, our forefathers in this community went to the local town meeting, could have been in a church, could have been at someone's house, and they voted things. That's the great thing about this town. It's very sacred, and that means something when someone's up there. But when they tell you this and they do that, and once again, no issue with you gentlemen at all. None at all. I want to make that clear. I'm not happy in how this was presented. I got used. And you know, I don't have a problem with anybody coming into the town. Not at all. But that was never said. Not at all. The banks and the restaurants. And that's how Holland thanked us. Putting that big sign, and I saw that and I go, we got screwed. Plain and simple, that's exactly what happened. Once again, I'll say it emphatically, not with you guys. So it bothers me. And I'll be totally honest with you. That board back in the late 80s, Board of Selectmen, found enough reason to go to town meeting to zone that back because they were ticked off. They got used. I got used. We all supported the guy getting out of business. The state was going to demolish mobile one. It's still there today, okay? But it lost, but at least it was judged on merit. Now, you're talking about a couple restaurants in that congested area. Now, and like I said, and believe me, there's no bitterness here, but I dealt honest with people, and they shot it down, and I accepted it woefully, and it happened. Not a big deal. And I gotta say it, not happy on how this thing took place, and especially I got used by this guy, Bill Yetman. And since then, never saw him again. Got what he wanted, and I don't know if he bought the property or not, but you know, it bothers me. And I'll be honest, Mr. Chairman, and I like to hear what other people have to say, but I wouldn't mind entertaining a motion to table this for 2 weeks. Let's call Holland in here, tell us what happened, you know? You know, I know, Bob, and like I said, Bob, you know, we're friends, and I know that, and I'll say it. And I felt kind of not, I'd be remiss if I didn't say it. I couldn't live with myself if I couldn't say this. But, you know, it means something, and,
Well-
you know, and I hope to have a little bit of a debate on this here.
Number one, Mike, no offense taken.
No.
Number two, I don't think Yetman, maybe I wasn't clear at the beginning. This is, and Ms. Gingrich is here, and she can feel free to correct me if necessary. This was a part of it. Restaurants are an allowed use by right in that area with a special permit. So the restaurants themselves have zero to do with the rezoning that took place at the town meeting. That rezoning was specifically done to allow a portion of this parcel, which is approximately a third of it, to be used as, what did you call it?
General business.
No, the doggy.
Doggy World.
Doggy World. Well, Doggy World's coming. Doggy World is a part of this site plan, and it's a substantial part of this site plan. The dog daycare center, the dog condo, hotel, whatever you want to call it,
Yeah.
was prohibited under the zoning bylaws prior to its inaction, prior to its acceptance by the town meeting. So when Howland, before they rezoned this property, Howland could have put 3 restaurants on this site without going to the town meeting. So the town meeting vote has nothing to do with either of the, that's an allowed use in this area. And he's got special permits for both of them. What the town meeting did allow him to do is add the doggy daycare to the
general
site plan.
business. To
Yeah.
general business.
To any business,
No,
to
but-
any area. Correct. In that,
Specifically general business.
that bylaw was written
For
when-
doggy world.
when Ms. Hamilton was here to allow that use
Right.
on, it can be
Right.
put in other sites, but it was crafted for that site, and that's what's going there, along with the
To be
restaurant.
totally honest with you, what we could have did, and I thought about it, but I said, no, you gotta take people for what their word is worth. That was on general industrial, and I know the present director wasn't here, it was Carol Hamilton. All you had to do is put a category under general industrial to allow the use of, say, doggy world or pets or whatever, in general industrial. But we moved heaven and earth for doggy world to put it under general business, and to be totally honest, these restaurants are just coming in the back door. That's exactly what happened.
That's not true, Mike, because they're an allowed use in that area.
Under general business. But a restaurant is not allowed in general industrial. If somebody early on said, that's the truth.
it is, right?
And
It's a special permit.
I stand to be corrected. I served on a planning board for 3 years, been involved in this town a long time. What they could have did was, Carol Hamilton could have, if she wanted to, because the big concern was doggy world, just create a line that allowed the use of doggy world in a general industrial zone, and it could have went there. And that's what people voted on. That's what people got up at town meeting about, and voted that.
Well, I was involved in the rezoning of that parcel from its inception, and there was never any, whatever your discussion was with Mr. Yetman, my discussions with the planning department, who was not Ms. Gingrich at the time, were very clear on what the plans were for that property, because when the zoning article was submitted, all 3 of these uses are in the works.
So I understand. You know, I don't micromanage. I mean, I served on the planning board 3 years. I ran to the board of selectmen, been elected on the board since. The planning board, and there's a thing called mutual respect, but it needs to be said. And I would stand to be corrected, and I know I'm right. And I know that, and I'm not gonna put the director on notice here, but that doggy world could have went on that parcel under general industrial. All they had to do was incorporate that use in that zone for that. And that could have happened, but it didn't. We moved heaven and earth for doggy world, therefore open up everything under the sun. And it just bothers me, to be honest with you. Weeks later, I see that sign, and I said, wow, here's a guy who said to me and talked to me, and I got used. And I'm gonna be honest, that's how I feel. And hey, I really believe dealing honest with folks, and I really truly do. And there's no bitterness in here, and I don't have a problem with you, Bobby. I love you. You're a great guy, and I don't know you well, and I know you got a great reputation. But it has to be said. It's got to be said.
Oh, and I don't mind you saying it, but, and
I know.
Ms. Gingrich wasn't here when the,
I know.
when the article was presented, but there was a general consensus with the planning department at that time that general industrial use on that corner, it was not the highest and most efficient use. And what Ms. Gingrich can speak to, if she so wishes, that this was one of, I think, 3 or 4 different site plan reviews being reviewed, and Mr. Hult's familiar with the others as well.
No, and I understand. I'm not asking all
no,
I'm
I'm just-
asking is the simple question. Could doggy world gone into general industrial zone? Because that was the big theme of the town meeting. Doggy world. It absolutely could have went in general industrial if you added the language to allow that use in general industrial. And I know it's yes. And now that we're talking it, I wish the director would correct me if I'm wrong. I know I'm right.
No, if you wrote it into the zoning that it was allowed in that district and made that zoning change, it would be allowed.
That's right. Okay, so doggy world could have went in that parcel under general industrial. All you had to do was add into that particular use. All right, but that didn't happen. They changed everything.
But no, and I understand that, and that's
Okay,
what
but
I'm saying.
that's-
There was a general consensus, not only for the dog daycare facility,
Yeah.
there was a general consensus to allow that in a general business zone. That site in particular, I'm not denying that, it was written, a portion of that bylaw was written for that site. It's also the consensus of the planning department at that time that the highest and most efficient use of that corner was not to continue to encourage general industrial use, but to encourage a general business use. And whether you or I might agree that, but a restaurant is an allowed use in a general business zone with a special
Yeah,
permit.
but, I
And this
don't wake-
gentleman
I
has those
understand.
permits.
I don't wake up one morning and make this up. That gentleman came to see me early on before even any hearing. And I said, fine, not a problem. That's what he wanted to do, and it didn't happen.
Well,
All right, but I'm just being honest, that's exactly what happened. Hey, you know, I mean, I know there's other members, I know I talked about it, but, I mean, I could go on and on and on, I made some notes here. But I just want to prove the point that that could have went in general industrial, as the planning board director stated, and that main talk, the whole theme of that town meeting was doggy world, nothing else. Doggy world. And that's it. It didn't talk about restaurants, didn't talk about banks. Everyone was excited and motivated because we all love our animals. We spend billions and billions of dollars years on cats and dogs and shelter and all that because we love our animals. And everyone's so excited about it. Where's Doggy World?
I'm
I
not,
didn't see Doggy World on that sign, Holland Development. I didn't see Doggy World weeks later. No, nowhere to be found. And that
Well,
really ticks me off because I got used in this thing. And I'll say it, not with you guys. I respect both of you. I'm really ticked off Holland. Multi-million dollar company to make a couple of more $1 million, and they did this, and now they sold this property, and, I understand. That ticks me off. I got used in this whole thing, and I would hope to think other people, and I'm sure there's not a lot of folks here who maybe say it, but a lot of folks that went to town meeting were excited about it, and they all supported Doggy World overwhelmingly. And that was the theme of that meeting. It wasn't talking about anything else but Doggy World. I think I've said enough, and,
well,
you know,
if that's the case though, Mike, those people will be happy to know that it's coming in the fall.
yeah.
It's also permitted, fully
No,
permitted.
I understand, but that was the sole theme for that. There was nothing talk about anything else. That's fact. That's all.
Thanks. Yeah, out of respect for Mr. McCoy, and he's been on this board for many years, I certainly wanted to offer him as much time as he deemed necessary to voice whatever observations that he had. I guess I want to make sure that it's made clear, and I think you made the point, so forgive me if I restate it, but it really, the conversation that was just had really has nothing to do with Mr. Palmer's request here this evening. So I appreciate you, Mr. Palmer, sort of participating, or at least, being a part of that conversation. Unfortunately, I'm sorry?
It has everything to do with that zoning change, allowing that use to open up to everybody. It absolutely had everything to do with it.
Well, I guess what I'm suggesting, Mike, is that Mr.
I know,
Palmer's
I
here
said enough.
asking for a...
I think people understand where I'm coming
Okay,
from.
fair enough.
Yeah.
I want to run down to my right here, Mr. Smaglia.
No, everything looks good on the application. I'm looking forward to Doggy World as well. I don't have a dog, but it's a needed entity in town. And if this does pass, good luck.
Mr. Newhouse.
Yeah, I would just make the observation that I wasn't privy to the conversations that Mr. McCoy had. If I felt somebody had misled me, I'd be agitated about it. But having said that, I happen to believe that a general business zoning district in that area, in sum, is better for the, in total, is better for the town than a general industrial. So, coming from that perspective, I wouldn't have any objection to the application.
Thank you, Mr. Newhouse. If I may, looking at the seating chart, Mr. Palmer, and I see what you mean, you see the bar area sort of in the back. As I walk in the entry area to the left, so that's the bathroom, sort of that bay that I see in the middle, those are the restrooms with, are those high-top tables around?
No, that's a banquette seating around that wall, the horseshoe wall.
Yeah.
And what that does, that allows you flexibility in seating groups.
Oh, okay.
So the booths are restricted to 2s, 4s, because of the design.
Okay.
But the banquette allows you to push tables together and create 2, 4, 6, 8, as long as the length allows.
Got it.
So it's a seat facing a booth.
Thank you. I got it. I had a follow-up question. What the heck was it? Oh, do you foresee at some point in the future, I don't see the layout seems to not lend itself to any kind of entertainment or
I'm not a big proponent of entertainment. I've tried it in a couple of my properties.
Yeah.
I think it can be fun, but no, I don't do that.
Okay. That's fair. As you said that, I'm thinking Tanner Tavern, and
Yeah,
there's
well, that-
entertainment there.
Yeah, and that's why my brother bought that from me, because he wanted to run it more as a sports bar lounge. I'm more of a restaurant guy, straight ahead.
And so, will there be like television viewing areas at the counter service or at the bar area, or both?
At
or-
the bar.
Okay.
Yeah.
Great. Mr. Peterson, I'll have you know, it doesn't offend me, but on your cover sheet from February 3rd, I'm trying to think what to call this. It's when you're advising us that you represent Wilmington's East Coast Diner to us. You wrote to me, but the dear line is Dear Chairman Newhouse. So I'm sure Mr. Newhouse appreciates that. But the only reason I bring it to your attention is just for, in the template, you might want to edit for future purposes.
Well, he's probably not offended, because he was probably the chairman when I submitted the red heat application, which is where that template
Cut
came
and
from.
pasting, fair enough. No worries on that.
I was at the time, and I even supported Red Heat.
Bear with me, I had another highlight that I wanted to cover here, forgive me. Oh, right, okay, this is the, because of the address information, when the address changes, we'll need to, as a board, revise the application or revise the certificate to the ABCC. We, the Board of Selectmen, as our, so I wanted to just remark on that and make sure we don't lose track of that when that does occur. I think that's all I had for questions, so I'll end our Board of Selectmen questions and answer period, and it is a public hearing, so I will go to the audience for any folks that want to offer questions or concerns or observations. Don't all stand up at once. I see no one that wants to make an observation, so that being said, I would accept a motion to close the...
Do you want to
oh,
have the
I'm sorry.
recommendations?
Oh, please, Jeff, yeah, thank you.
So we have recommendations here from the police chief, Michael Bagonis. Upon completing an investigation, the Wilmington Police Department recommends approval of the request to serve alcohol beverages as presented by Wilmington East Coast Diner, DBA The East Coast Diner, Inc., located at 203 Lowell Street, Wilmington, Mass., and its principals, Michael A. and Amy Palmer of, so that his recommendation is from the police chief, also from the building inspector. Property is located in a general business zone. This is allowed use requiring a special permit from the Board of Appeals, which was issued on October 14, 2015. Recommendation from Shelley Newhouse, Health Director. I recommend approval of the application for a new alcohol license submitted by Wilmington East Coast Diner, Inc., DBA East Coast Diner, located at 203 Lowell Street. I would just suggest that the board approve the all alcohol license conditioned upon the restaurant being constructed as it's represented in the floor plans that are presented.
Thank you. Last question, I'm sorry, we're going to see you for a common victuals license at a future date, is that right?
And normally, what I do in these cases is I submit the application for the common vic after the building's been completed, because one of the provisions for the sign-off from the Board of Health is a final inspection of the kitchen. Obviously, there's nothing there now but trees, so.
And maybe you said it and I wasn't listening. What's the schedule at this point for you?
We have final site plan approval. We're still working on common driveway and parking easements, and final land court approval of the subdivision plan. So we might be 30, 60 days away from closing.
Okay. Great.
Mr. Chairman, if I may, and I made this mistake with the red heat, and I'd like to correct it now if I could. In the approved plan with the planning board, there's a small area of outdoor seating, patio seating to the, if you look at the plot plan and the back entrance, and I'd be more than happy to provide that plan to the board. There's a patio that's on the approved plan outside the building above the back door. So it'd be the upper door on your plan. It'd be right to the left.
Outside the door to the left?
Correct. It seats approximately 30 people. I will get the board a plan for that. But my understanding from the last vote, unless it's included in your vote, it's not, it wouldn't be allowed by the ABCC. And I did forget to add it to the application. But there is an approved patio on the site plan with the planning board.
Thank you for noting that.
And I'd be happy to provide the board with that plan prior to the submittal to the ABCC if you like it.
I think it might be
Yeah, I
prudent
would
just to,
advise, yes.
thank you, Bob. Any other questions or a motion?
I'd move to grant the request for the all alcohol license, and specifically to include approval of a outdoor seating area that complies with the approved site plan.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. All in favor?
I'll oppose.
And opposed?
I mean, and I will abstain from it. Not oppose it, I will
Okay.
abstain from it.
4 in favor and 1 abstain. Yes, please.
I believe it uses, because it's a daycare or 1 year is within 500 feet, it needs, a special motion that it's not won't be detrimental to the.
I saw some language in here about proximity to
Church or a daycare?
the daycare.
Is there a particular motion that was included in the file, Beverly? Let's see.
I put it on top, on top of that.
Oh, okay. So I guess the motion would just need to be altered to note that it is not detrimental because of its proximity to the Wonder Years Daycare Center, not detrimental to the activities there.
Does the maker of the motion not intend that the motion include that finding as described by the manager?
You want to continue to second? Sorry. So let's, if we may, we'll just consider that a newly made motion and seconded. And again, I'll ask all in favor of that motion. I have 4 and
I'll
opposed.
abstain for the vote. I won't oppose it, I'll abstain from it.
Thank you, Mr. Peterson, Mr. Palmer. Good luck. We'll look forward to seeing you again in a few weeks or months.
Is there any anticipated opening date?
I think it's gonna be around 9 to 12 months from financing and and permits.
Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next scheduled appointment is with Valerie Gingrich, our Director of Planning and Conservation, with regards to the intermunicipal agreement for Regional Housing Services Office. Ms. Gingrich, thank you for being here.
Good evening.
And for contributing to that last conversation as well.
Sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
But please, let us know what's going on.
So what you have before you tonight is an interim municipal agreement with the towns of Reading, North Reading, and Saugus. The 4 towns share a regional housing office, and this is the second agreement that we would be signing for the office. During the first 2 years, the office has managed to compile a comprehensive database of all of our affordable units in town, put together all of the deeds with the deed riders and deed restrictions, and has assisted me in monitoring, in reselling, refinancing of units, all of the technical paperwork that has to go with that with the state. They've assisted in crafting a new regulatory agreement with Avalon. The town is now the monitoring agent for that, so we will be relying on the housing office to help us with that. And they've just provided a lot of backup as far as doing the paperwork that needs to be done, and their next step will be creating monitoring plans for all of our different housing projects and helping us with those. So this agreement is for another 2 years, fiscal year 17 and 18, and they'll be very instrumental in helping us to maintain our 10% affordable housing status. And I would recommend that we continue with this housing office. It's really nice to have not only a shared resource, but actually having the other towns as shared resources as well. So if you have any questions about the office or its function, I'd be happy to answer those.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll certainly turn it over to my colleagues here on the board. I won't start to one side. I'll just see if there's anyone that has a question specifically and let you start. How's that? We'll mix it up a little bit. Lou, you?
I just was wondering if you could explain what happens if we're not at the 10% of affordable housing, because a lot of people, I get that question a lot, believe it or not. So maybe you could explain to,
Sure. So if we're not at the 10% status, which is 10% of our total housing units being affordable units, or listed on our housing inventory, we're susceptible to 40B projects, which is projects like the Avalon, or actually most of our affordable housing projects in town are 40B projects. They don't have to comply with the local zoning. They can be more dense. They can do different things than we allow by right in town. And by being at the 10%, we're not susceptible to those.
it's an important point that I think a lot of people should know. But why we strive and work hard to, and why it's big that we're now managing the Avalon Oaks, that part of it. Well, thank you for your work on that. Thank you.
Thanks, Lou. Anybody else? Yeah, Mike.
I guess just as a follow-up to that, I would just make note of the fact that when you reach that threshold and that minimum number, that comes with it a significant degree of oversight to make sure that the financing mechanisms and the restrictions that go along with it continue to be followed, or else you do all that work for nothing. So I think that the agreement makes sense. The only question I did have, Valerie, is with respect to the membership fees, and I'm not challenging this point, I'm just curious how I appreciate the fact that you specifically make mention of the fact that the respective membership fees amongst North Reading, Reading, Saugus, and Wilmington are essentially distributed in accordance with how much each municipality expects to get for a benefit and a time commitment from that company. So is it just based on the number of units? Is it based on the function that they're going to perform in each town? How do you mean that specifically?
So the percentages are based on the number of units in each town.
Okay.
And that was sort of a way to start that, to set it up. And it's turning out that I wondered if these percentages would need to shift a little bit, because now that we have an inventory, which is directly related to how many units you have, once that's set up, I thought maybe, the workload will shift a little bit. But it's turning out that because we have more units, there's more to monitor, there's more reselling, there's more refinancing, there's just more paperwork involved because we have more units. So we track the hours, and it's turning out that these percentages are pretty right. So it's directly related to that number of units.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, again, the other upside is the fact that we're subsidizing a good portion of this is reflective of the fact that we've managed to reach that threshold with, I think most people would agree, without real detrimental impacts on the town in terms of what some of those dense developments kind of, the potential downside to some of them. So I'm certainly supportive of it, as we have been in the past.
Thank you, Mike. Left?
I think it's all been said. Just thank you for being here. It's pretty self-explanatory, so I don't want to be redundant. But, I think I can see a consistent effort on your part to really look at the housing that we have in town, past, present, future, and try and make sure that Wilmington remains an attractive place to live, and there's offerings for everyone at every age level and every income bracket. And I think that's important because the business of real estate, among other things, is what's going to keep this town progressive and dynamic and moving forward. So I think it's important that we continue to look at things like this. So thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Mike?
Yeah, pretty much it's all been said, and I feel confident we're in great hands with that, with you, so I feel confident we're gonna be fine. Thank you.
Thank you, Valerie. Yeah, similar to Mr. Newhouse, I had highlighted some of the stuff where you talked about the percentages, and I don't know North Reading and Reading all that well in terms of their housing stock, but I was surprised to learn that we are almost twice the percentage of Saugus. And that struck me, that surprised me, as I think Saugus closer to the city, right off of Route 1, I would have thought that there would have been more units, I guess. And I didn't know what you said, I didn't know it was units. So I thought, well, how does this percentage come up? So, but again, it certainly makes sense. I understand the mathematics of it. The 40B, the fear, I think, or the reputation, I think, that you were referring to, that I think folks think, oh, we have to have, low-income housing, that it's going to be really dense, or that it's going to be inconsistent with the complexion of the town, or that that it's not going to meet with people's expectations. And I think what we've been able to do, like my colleagues have said already, is that we've been able to strike a nice balance where we do have multi-family residential developments. They're well kept, they look good, they seem appropriate for the neighborhoods that they're in. So my compliments, I think, to planning and to the whole concept behind that. And if this organization is able to help us monitor and manage that relationship, I'm all in favor of it as well. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. Jeff, I don't know if you have comments or feedback?
No, I think it's pretty well been highlighted. Valerie and I had talked about this back shortly after she started, and, she was taking the position that to monitor how this would work out, and it clearly seems like the program has worked, and as has been previously noted, there's a significant responsibility to maintaining the records related to these affordable units. So I think it's money that's well spent.
Thank you. Anything else to offer at this time? So I think at this point, was it appropriate that we would want to take a vote to approve the continuation of our membership in this organization?
Yes.
Second?
Lou has made the motion, Mike has seconded it. Any further discussion? I see none. All in favor? It is unanimous. Thank you, Valerie.
Thank you.
Thanks for your leadership. I'll ask you to hang tight a little bit, because we're going to jump to communications, and you're first on that bullet, so. Thank you. Jeff?
Sure. There's 4 signatures that need to be. So first, under communication, is the memorandum from Valerie with regard to the intermunicipal agreement, which I think we've talked about, so no further discussion there. Next memo is with regard to the open space plan, and you'll note that Valerie indicates we have received final approval for our open space plan, which is certainly advantageous to us because it allows the opportunity to be eligible for certain grants. Beyond that, it also establishes a framework for some of the things that we're looking to do over the next 5 years in terms of open space and recreation.
Thank you. With Valerie here and with this as our first communication item, I wanted to make sure that we had the opportunity, if anyone here at the board wanted to offer any questions or observations on this, to do so. So I don't know if you have any thoughts on it. Mike? Mr. McCoy? No? Judy?
No.
If I may, I always have thoughts. So it's clearly advantageous for us, and thank you for sort of spearheading this along the process. The clear advantage in having the plan in place for our eligibility to apply for and hopefully receive grants is an obvious. But I don't want, and I know it's not. So what I would not want to see happen is to have that be the sole goal that comes out of this. We spent a fair amount of time and energy and spent some human capital to come up with these goals. And I'm excited about some of these goals. I think that it will make a a marked impact and improvement on quality of life within the community. And some of them are, we can knock out kind of quickly in the beginning here, as we've discussed in the past. So I'm excited about it, and I just want the community to know that the intent of the planning board and of the town is to not just have a document that we can hang our hat on, but rather a plan that we can implement over the course of the next 5 years and hopefully even beyond that. Is that a reasonable re-articulation of the process?
Definitely.
Good.
We worked hard to come up with action items that we could definitely, do in the short term. And there's nothing that pains me more than a plan that doesn't have clear, precise action items that you can check off of the list. And that's what we came up with. We came up with the checklist, and as you can see, we've already started checking things off of that list, which feels good.
Mr. Chair, I would note just that point that, for example, the first goal that's noted here is providing walking and bicycle trails, and it's noted that data has already been collected with regard to the existing trails, and putting that information on the town's GIS mapping system for public access, looking to establish a balance of resources to meet open space demands and a variety of amenities. We're doing that through the Yental Farm Project, the construction of the dog park, are just a couple of points there, and then protecting the town's natural and open space areas, the conservation subdivision, the one that's located off of Marion Street, 26-lot subdivision will have 30 acres of open space with interconnecting trails with other developments. So just those are just some examples of converting this plan into action.
Wonderful. And that was the point that I wanted to have made, and thank you for helping me do that. So that's that. Unless there's any other questions for Valerie? Thank you very much, Valerie.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, indeed.
Next, under correspondence, is memorandum from me to the board with regard to the Middlesex Canal. Middlesex Canal Association's concerns over the dog park. So I would just note that we received last week email correspondence from representatives, both the town's representatives on the commission as well as the chair of the commission, expressing concerns about our efforts to construct a dog park. And in particular, there seemed to be concern about the failure to notify them in a timely manner. Certainly, it was not our intent to hide anything here, and you'll recall that on February 1st, when I presented my budget to the Board of Selectmen, the Finance Committee, and the public at large, it was specifically noted that there would be a dog park in the works for this site. In fact, there were great pains taken by the Public Works Department, in particular the engineering division, to cite this in a way that it was not going to conflict with the carnival, with the, could be a carnival, with the canal. It's not within the footprint. It's at least 100 feet, a little bit excess of that, outside of the canal footprint. The area that is being proposed for the dog park also avoids any impact on the kiosk that is there that was referenced in this correspondence. It also avoids any impact to the trail that extends off of the parking lot. However, certainly in deference to the commission, Paul Looney, the town engineer, has been in contact with these representatives and has explained in great detail the process that was used in identifying this particular location. Talks about the topography related to this area, and also to address the issue of the 7-day notice. A letter was sent to the Middlesex Canal Commission last Friday, essentially giving them the opportunity to offer any comments that they choose to make between essentially this week, and the town will not be taking any action this week to do any further work on that site. So we will wait to hear from the commission and consider any of their comments. Next is a memorandum from the town manager to the board. This is with regard to the withdrawal of an application for grant funding. You'll recall that the town had put in a request for $250,000 for the Land and Water Conservation Fund. This money is directly administered by the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs, but it is essentially federal money that comes from the U.S. Department of Interior. The intent was for this $250,000 to offset some of the costs associated with the Yentile project. In fact, we were advised that the federal government's review of this project will not likely occur until spring of 2017, and that any work, any costs associated with this project would not be eligible for funding through this grant until the grant has been approved. So really ultimately comes down to just a timing issue that unfortunately, given the fact that we will be starting this project in the next few weeks, expect to have the bulk of the project done in this calendar year, with the finishing up the project in the spring of 2017. Essentially, by the time we would have, if in fact we were to receive the grant, we would have expended the lion's share of the money. Next is memorandum from me to the board with regard to the July 4th commission, or the festival, that is. So just to provide the board a status on where we are with regard to the carnival. At the last meeting of the board, the directive was issued to issue a request for proposal for a carnival and to go through the process of seeking to obtain the rights to have a carnival at the site of the former Swain School. Since that meeting, we have submitted a request for consideration on a repetitive petition to both the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals. That was done on the 26th of February. At this point, a special meeting of the Planning Board has been established for March 21st. At that meeting, I will be presenting the case as to why the Planning Board should consent to allow this application to go forward, essentially on the basis that it is specifically and materially different from the application that was submitted by the July 4th committee. So the Planning Board must consent, and at least all but one of the members must vote in favor of allowing this to go forward to the Zoning Board of Appeals. If that is the case, we also have a special meeting of the Zoning Board of Appeals scheduled for March 24th. At that meeting, I will be making looking to make the case to the Zoning Board of Appeals that this application is specifically and materially different than the first application. That is the standard that is required in order for the Board of Appeals to actually consider the merits. They would then have to vote in favor, again, in a similar manner. At least 4 of the 5 members would have to vote in favor of that this application is materially different than the previous one. If in fact that does take place, then the plan would be to present the application for a special permit to the Zoning Board of Appeals at their meeting on April 13th. And at that meeting, I would be making the case on the merits in terms of the program that we look to provide. And just to outline briefly, the town's proposal for this event would be to have a carnival beginning on Thursday, June 30th, and running through July 3rd. It would be a 4-day event. The application previously was a Wednesday to Sunday event, 5 days versus 4. In terms of time, the town's proposal suggests a 5 p.m. to 9 p.m. Time frame for the carnival on both Thursday and Friday night, and then Saturday noon to 10, which would be that correspond with the night of the fireworks. Sunday carnival from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. So that is separate and distinct hours from those presented by the committee. Also, in terms of the number of rides, we're talking about something in the order of 12 to 14 rides versus 15 as proposed by the committee. And then concessions, we're looking at not more than 12 concession or games set up versus 15 by the committee. So we're hopeful that this will work. In the meantime, there's a request for proposal that's in draft form, looking to finalize that this week, and that would be issued with the expectation that the deadline would fall after the April 13th meeting, and then if all goes well with the Zoning Board of Appeals, then shortly after that, bearing in mind there is an appeal period to a Board of Appeals decision, I would be looking to award a contract for the carnival.
Thank you.
Next, under correspondence, is a letter from Mary Jane Handy, Director of Accounts, regarding the Shawshene Tax excess and deficiency funds. This is the equivalent, if you will, of the town's free cash. So for the year ending June 30th, 2015, their balance is $1,305,969. Next under correspondence is a letter from Michael Sweeney, Executive Director of the Mass State Lottery. The State Lottery is looking to offer the opportunity to Richdale's store, 335 Main Street, to have a Keno to Go product. Essentially the way this works, and there's been a few of these that have been presented to the board previously, the board has 21 days from the receipt of this letter to object to this particular offering. I have asked that the chief review this, and the response from the police department is that they recommend approval of the Keno to Go request presented for Richdale. So unless the board chooses to oppose this, there is no action that is required by the board.
So again, this doesn't require an approval vote. I don't see anybody speaking up, so we'll just continue moving forward. We are at item number 6, which is signing the warrant and closing and signing the warrant for the annual town meeting, a meaty warrant as it is. So I chatted briefly with Jeff before the meeting just to verify what is typical of this process for this meeting this evening, knowing that we have the joint meeting of the Planning Board and Finance Committee scheduled for tomorrow night, where each of the articles will be delved into with some depth, and ample opportunity will be given to residents and petitioners to make their case. That said, as we go through the warrant this evening, we'll do it at a very, very high summary level, and just sort of give members at the board here an opportunity to ask any questions as we go through it, but I think we probably will go through it with some rapidity. Is that acceptable? Very well. Jeff?
Okay, so Article 1 is noted was the article with regard to election of officials to the town. Article 2 is the article to hear committee reports. The expectation there is to hear a report with regard to the Yentau project and also the facilities plan. Article 3 is to appropriate or transfer funds for the purpose of unpaid bills. We don't anticipate any. Article 4 is the article that authorizes the treasurer collector to engage in borrowing. Article 5 is the omnibus article, if you will, with regard to the town's operating budget. Article 6 is the article that addresses various capital associated with vehicles. Police, fire, DPW, and school all have vehicles slated for purchase. Article 7 is for technology for the town. Article 8 is request for funding for electronic control weapons, otherwise known as tasers, for the police department. Article 9 is appropriation to authorize portable radios for the fire department. Article 10 is for a study of the intersections, a master plan for the intersections throughout town, looking at the intersections that are in the worst condition and those that need to be addressed first. Article 11 is engineering services for proposed design or redesign upgrades to Route 38 from the bridge at 62 to the Woburn City line. Article 12 is to relocate underground control panel for the sewer pump station at the Public Safety Building. Article 13 is roof replacement for a portion of the roof at the North Intermediate. Article 14 is replace the entire roof at the Boutwell School. Article 15 is school-related. This is the Foundations English Language Arts Program, phonics program for kindergarten. Article 16 is the Lucy Culkin's unit study for reading, again, school-related reading and writing literacy. Article 17, social emotional learning curriculum for pre-K to 5th grade. Article 18 is to purchase the first phase of the voice over IP phone system for the Wilmington schools. Article 19, upgrades to their computer switches. This is, again, the schools and the elementary schools. Article 20 is request to transfer funds from free cash to the other post-employment benefits trust. Article 21 is to transfer funds from free cash to the capital stabilization account. Article 22 is to transfer funds from free cash to the employee retirement stabilization fund. Article 23 is to authorize funds to make a direct payment to Middlesex Retirement System. This is essentially to expedite our payments to the Middlesex system. Article 24 is to transfer, this is a typical transfer article, so any issues that we have in terms of budgets that are, where the expenditures have exceeded the funds available, we will be looking to make transfers from other accounts where we have available balances. Article 25 is to appropriate funds for the July 4th celebration. Article 26 is to support the Memorial Day and Veterans Day celebrations. Article 27 is an appropriation for the renewal of leases for the Veterans of Foreign Wars Clubhouse and the American Legion Clubhouse. Article 28 is to authorize the revolving accounts for both the sewer septic tank replacement program and the compost bin program. Article 29 is to authorize the revolving account the enterprise fund for the rink. Article 30 is to amend zoning by displaying for sale signs in used car lots. This is the issue of allowing for up to 2 signs for used cars to be displayed. Article 31 is to authorize participation in the MWRA's fund for assistance in infiltration inflow reduction programs. Article 32 is, would give the Board of Selectmen the authorization to monitor the low and moderate income homes at the Avalon Oaks, similar to what Valerie talked about earlier. Because Avalon is no longer responsible for doing that monitoring, that responsibility falls to the town. Article 33 is to amend the zoning bylaw with regard to seating for sandwich shops. Currently, there is no seating allowed. This would allow seating up to 12. Article 34 is to amend the bylaws. This is with regard to stormwater management. So if the intent here is to make the stormwater management bylaw more accommodating for smaller scale projects. Article 35 is to amend the zoning bylaw as it relates to the floodplain district. Again, this is to reflect changes that FEMA has made in categorizing floodplains. Article 36, to amend zoning bylaw to establish the ability to have outdoor patio seating at restaurants, general service restaurants. Article 37 is to amend the zoning bylaw to provide auto and truck rental. Article 38 is to amend the zoning bylaw to create a neighborhood mixed-use zoning district along Lowell Street from Dartmouth Street to Lowell Street. Article 39 is to amend the zoning bylaw as it pertains to medical marijuana treatment centers. Essentially, this is a housekeeping article that is intended to comport with the current regulations with regard to medical marijuana. Article 40 is to amend the inhabitant bylaws for the purpose of compliance with the state law as it relates to animal control. So this is revising our current laws related to dogs. Article 41 is to amend the inhabitant bylaws as they relate to language regarding the chairman of the Finance Committee. Article 42, this begins the petition articles. This is to purchase town-owned land on 5th Street off of Nichols Street. Article 43, to establish a bylaw providing disposition of civil traffic infractions. Article 44, to purchase town-owned land on Beeching and Faulkner. Article 45, to adopt MGL Chapter 41, Sections 81 F, G, H. Article 46, to adopt Bill H 1181, it relates to safety on school grounds. Article 47 is to amend the zoning bylaw rezoning from R60 to R20, 6 Summer Street, which is off of Cobalt Street, near McDonald Road. Article 48 is to name the corner of 136 Church Street and Adams Street in memory of William R. Harrison. Article 49 is to amend the zoning bylaws, rezoning from R20 to neighborhood business land at 677 Main Street, which is across from Weber Place. Article 50 is to amend the zoning bylaw by rezoning, creating an over 55 housing district for property along Andover Street, and this is up in the Foster's Pond area. Article 51, to seek to purchase town-owned land on 16 Pond Street. Article 52, to amend the zoning bylaws with regard to rezoning from R20 in general business to general business in its entirety, property at 312 Main Street, former Joe Berry oil property. Article 53, to amend the zoning bylaw and associated maps from general industrial to neighborhood mixed-use zoning district property at 635 Main Street. Article 54, to amend the zoning bylaws by rezoning from general industrial to central business district property at 635 Main Street. And then finally, Article 55, to amend the zoning bylaw by rezoning from R60 to R20 parcels on Aldrich Road, 130 Aldrich, 205 Aldrich, 126 Aldrich, and 128 Aldrich.
Thank you. As stated, that was a fast summary review of the articles, the details of which will be discussed tomorrow night and several times thereafter. So with that said, I would accept a motion unless there's questions, but we can certainly have questions after a motion is made. I would accept a motion to close the warrant and accept it. I don't know if that's the terminology here.
So moved as described by the chairman.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Is there further discussion? I see none. Then all in favor? I think it was unanimous. Mike, did I see? No, unanimous. Thank you.
Just 2 copies. The next item on the board to consider is a request from the Wilmington band parents and friends to sell coffee, donuts, various other items during the Memorial Day parade. This is a standard request, if you will, and there's no issues from the town.
Move to grant the request as read by the manager.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Discussion? See none. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
The next is a board to request, board to consider a request from the Sons of Italy, Wilmington band parents to use the Swain School parking lot on Saturday, May 14th from 7 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. for the purpose of conducting a yard sale to raise funds. We have checked this out with the police and DPW, with Debbie Cipriani. The rec office notes would recommend the group use the Saturday, May 14th. And she indicates they have a large group registered for a Hawaii cruise from the 19th to the 28th. So that could be a problem in the parking lot, I guess, with cars coming in there on the 21st. So the 14th looks good.
So what do we do if the 14th rains? Do we just say, I don't want to rain on their parade?
Well, they have to forfeit their trips and give it to the Board of Selectmen.
So if the rain date doesn't work, would it make sense to potentially say, or another date,
I
you
would
know,
say
subject to approval by the manager or something?
yeah, if there's no other conflict, certainly we'll try to find a date for them that does not conflict.
So I guess
Just so
we'd
they wouldn't have to come back?
Right.
Right.
Do you want to formulate a motion to that effect, Ms. O'Connell?
So moved.
Second.
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you.
We have a request from the Relay for Life. This is that we illuminate the lights purple during the month of May. Again, this was a request that was made last year. We have the means to do that.
Yeah, I was going to say we have the stuff that it
Filters,
takes,
right.
the gels or whatever it is. Very well. I know we did that last year, and it's,
Just to note, purple is the color for Relay as it represents all cancer survivors, and with May being the Skin Awareness Month, the most preventable cancer, having the lights purple is also a reminder to people to protect themselves from the sun.
thank you. Is there a motion?
Move to grant the request as itemized by the manager.
Second.
Motion has been made and seconded. Is there further discussion? All in favor? Unanimous? Thank you. Look forward to that. Thank you.
And then we have a board to consider a request from Susan Hendy, PMC Wilmington Kids Ride Coordinator. This is to close off a portion of Carter Lane to conduct the annual Pan Mass Challenge Kids Bike Ride on Sunday, May 22nd, 2016, from 8 a.m. to 1 p.m. And we have no issues with that date.
That's awesome. Is there a motion?
Move to grant the request.
Second?
Motion's made and seconded. Any discussion? Other than me, I just wish them well. It's a great event, and I'm glad that they're back doing it again. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much. We are at public comments. Anyone from the audience wish to offer a question? Thank you. New business committee reports. I'll start to my right. Mr. Newhouse.
Nothing here.
Mr. Smaglia.
Good.
Running out of time, gentlemen. Mr. McCoy, sorry.
I'm good, Mr. Chairman, thank you.
All
Ms.
set.
O'Donnell?
Thank you.
As am I. Thank you. Jeff, if you could.
Well, if I may, Mr. Chairman, now that you
Please.
put it that way. I've been asked on quite a few occasions why I wear the black ring on my index finger, and it is a project called At 22 Kill. It's to bring awareness to veteran suicide. The numbers are 22 veterans a day are killing themselves. So this is a way to bring awareness and show our support and let people know that it is a big problem. And if a veteran reaches out, by all means, just point them to me or another veterans office or the VA, and maybe we can help drop those numbers some. Thank you.
Thank you. It was good use of the time. Thank you for doing so. Jeff, for important dates.
Important dates, the meeting tomorrow evening is the Finance Committee Planning Board public hearing. This is the prelude, if you will, to the town meeting. We will go through all of the articles in detail, both the expenditure articles and the zoning articles. That'll be in the town auditorium at 7 p.m. March 17th is the Facilities Master Plan next meeting, right here, room 9, 7 p.m. Also on March 17th, registration deadline for rookies T-ball. March 26th is the Easter egg hunt, Town Common, 2 p.m. March 28th is the next Board of Selectmen's meeting. April 2nd is the rabies clinic, which will be held on Church Street, the Public Buildings Department, the old fire station, noon to 2 p.m. April 4th, the last day to register to vote for the annual town meeting and town elections. The town clerk's office will be open from 8:30 a.m. to 8 p.m.
Thank you, Jeff. Unless there's anything else, I'll accept a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Made and seconded. All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Thank you all. Good night.